Good morning, everyone. The Telegraph is a newspaper in the United Kingdom, and my mom's from the United Kingdom, so I look at this news every so often. I watch Brexit, and I have been watching Brexit since it happened, and I mean, it's lots of interesting things happening in the United Kingdom, and I often talk about how there are warnings to be taken from the United Kingdom for Canada, for our politics. I think their House of Lords is very fractured. I think that there's a lot of systemic problems with the way the EU works and works within their parliamentary system. So I think that there's a lot of issues that are happening in the United Kingdom. And I think that that's interesting to watch. And apparently they look at Canada and go, oh my goodness, I'm glad we don't have that nightmare. Here is Daniel Hannan from The Telegraph, and he says, I thought Britain had biased left-wing media until I spent time in Canada. So I thought this is an interesting article. The whole article isn't accessible by this link, but I'll put a link in the description that has the whole article to read. I'll read it a bit to you right now. It starts out like this. It says, Justin Trudeau, a man who can't remember how many times he darkened his skin for comic effect, has managed to form a minority government in Canada. His Liberal Party won Monday's election with fewer votes than the Conservatives, but under a quirk of the first-past-the-post system, emerged 36 seats ahead in the 338-member House of Commons. The Tories took it on the chin. Their leader, a likable man called Andrew Scheer, conceded graciously. I should declare an interest. Scheer is a friend, one of a handful of overseas leaders who publicly backed Brexit. I spent a week in Canada watching the election and came back stunned by the lopsidedness of their political culture. I scroll down. Like most British Tories, I expected a measure of media bias, immigration good, Israel bad, feminism good, austerity bad, etc. But I have never come across such a monolithic partisan commentariat as Canada's. I watched open-mouthed as one news anchor subject Scheer to a 30-second harangue about his lies before asking, quote, how do you explain to your 5 children from toddler to teenager that it is okay to lead a dirty campaign? Stunned, I wrote down her exact words, but no one else seemed surprised, and within a few days I understood why. A week before polling day, the state broadcaster went so far as to sue the Conservatives for breach of copyright because they, like other parties, had used news footage in an election advertisement. I scroll down. Uniquely, in the Anglosphere, Canada has seen almost no backlash against political correctness. So I want to pause here and point out the fact that this foreign person watching our election seemingly, well, I mean, he's got a bias, right? He's friends with Andrew Scheer, so he's clearly biased in that way. But he's watching our election and he's trying to be kind of even about it. And even he can't see that there is backlash against the political correctness. Because if you look at the news, if you look at the main news, from City to Global to CTV to CBC, there is no pushback. Because anybody pushing back is pilloried as racist or labeled as racist or divisive or whatever, ignoring all the racist and divisive stuff that Trudeau himself is doing and the left is doing, like Jagmeet Singh and during the debate, citing no evidence, just saying what you say is hateful. Garbage, absolute garbage, but still absolutely allowed in our system, which is crazy, but true. So back to the article. The doctrine of diversity and equality is enforced ruthlessly. Scheer was pilloried, for example, for not joining a pride march, not for expressing any reservations about gay rights, simply for declining to parade in celebration. Canadian politicians vie to out-Greta each other. I like that. Despite the fact that their country arguably has less to fear than any other from a rise in temperature. Yeah, because let's say you just go down to Florida. That's like in December, okay? Or January. Let's say January. Let's say the average temperature in January in Ontario, Northern Ontario, is minus 17. Let's say that. Let's say it averages out to that. And just agree because pretend. If you go down to Florida, you're experiencing 30 degrees of climate change because they're 15 degrees in January. And maybe 10 degrees. So 25 degrees of climate change? Like of temperature change? And that's not killing anybody. I need to point this out, right? Longitude is a thing. The Yukon survives at much cooler temperatures, and India is a country in the world that survives at much hotter temperatures. 2 degrees? 2 degrees in Toronto, 30 to 32. 32 to 34. Like, this is existential threat how? Okay, back to the article. There is no room for right-wing populism. The closest Canada got to Trumpism was a party that wanted to cut immigration from 350,000 a year to around 150,000. Anywhere else, 150,000 would be regarded as mass migration. But in Canada, it was howled down as far-right extremism, and the party took just 1.6% of the vote. Canada's Tories share the enthusiasm for high immigration and are the only center-right party in the West that wins electorally significant support from ethnic minorities. In 2 of the past 4 elections, immigrants were likelier to vote Conservative than native-born Canadians. How are we to explain these divergences from other wealthy democracies? A plausible explanation is offered by Eric Kaufman of Berbick College, a Vancouverite by origin. In the middle of his book White Shift, a brilliant analysis of how immigration is altering voting behavior across the West, there is a digression into Canadian exceptionalism. Kaufman shows how the public climate in Canada continues to stigmatize positions which, elsewhere in the Anglosphere, are regarded as legitimate. Opposition to immigration is still treated as racist. Quote, taboos which mark the boundaries of debate are very important in English Canada. Quite. And politics, as Andrew Breitbart used to observe, is downstream of culture. When public discourse is dominated by paeans of praise to diversity, expression of conservatism seems not just dissonant, but jarring. Imagine a Britain where there was no alternative to the Guardian BBC view of the world. That is what Canada has become. Yes. Scary. Here is Nick Taylor Vasey, sorry if I've got that wrong, and he says, a journalist asks the Department of Finance for a copy of a ministerial briefing note. The topic, recommendations made by the panel of experts that looked at how to implement the new federal money for journalists. The response, it's all redacted, all 27 pages. And so here's the letter. Oh, goodness. Sorry, hold on a second. Here's the letter. It says, Dear Mr. Taylor Vasey, this letter is a response to your request, which was received on September 6, 2019, under the Access to Information Act, the Act, for a copy of briefing note reference number, Read Journalism Panel. I regret to inform you that the records you requested are excluded under 69(1)(e) of the Act and therefore cannot be released. A copy of this section is attached. Please be advised that you are entitled to complain to the Information Commissioner concerning the processing of your request within 60 days of receipt of this notice. Okay, and the Section 69. Section 69 is, this act does not apply to confidences of the Queen's Privy Council for Canada, including without restriction the generality of the foregoing, and he references E of 1, right? I just want to show you. It says 69(1)(e), okay? So this is 69(1)(e). Records records the purpose of which is to brief ministers of the Crown in relation to matters that are before or are proposed to be brought before Council or that are subject of communications or discussions referred to in paragraph D. And paragraph D is records used for reflecting communications or discussions between ministers of the Crown on matters relating to making of government decisions or the formality of government policy. So no, sorry journalist, you're not allowed to see any of that. That's not allowed. It's all redacted. So isn't that weird? That's how our taxpayer dollars are going. That's where they're going. That's what they're going for. So that's concerning. That's concerning. Yes. I have 3 more stories, but we're at 8 minutes. Okay, so that's the end of the first grouping of videos this morning, or the first grouping of stories for the first video. I think this is concerning because, well, most things in the government rise to the level of the Privy Council. Just because they're rising to the level of the Privy Council, we don't get to have any kind of oversight. The public doesn't get oversight. The press doesn't get to see it. Everything is redacted. $600 million to the journalists, and no, we can't see how the process was discussed among our leaders. Really concerning. I thought the United Kingdom was a scary place to live, and apparently they think Canada is a scary place to live. So, wow. Perspective. It never ceases to amaze me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com. And, stay tuned. I'll have another video in just a minute. Oh, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.